And welcome to the Amazon Live, Conquer Leaders Amazon Live. I think our first official actual stream, because the first stream didn't stream. So it was recorded and put to YouTube instead. But I'm Mark Pittman, host of this new series, and I'm super excited to have Tracy Timm join me. Tracy, it's so good to have you. Thank you for being here for this conversation.
Yay! Thanks for having me. We're gonna have tons of fun. I'm really looking forward to this.
I know. I was telling before for everybody else before we get on. I said who. I was thinking, who can I play with who's also a page 2 author? And I knew it was Tracy because we met years ago at a speakers conference and just connected. She's doing amazing things and really cool things. And when I saw her book Unstoppable, I knew that was something I wanted to talk about. So Tracy, tell us a little bit about like where you are. Yeah. Put it up there, and people are watching it on Amazon. It's right there. Click the link. Buy now. It's already out, so you don't have to wait.
Exactly, right?
So what was some of the origin story for writing this book?
Oh man. So you know how every author says something to the effect of like 10 years I've been thinking about writing this book, or 5 years I've been thinking. So it's because it's true. I think there's something that needs to come, out of each person who just has to write a book.
But
it takes time to marinate. It takes time to become its fullest sort of manifestation. So the reason, the pure real reason that I wrote this book is that when I was 25 years old, I was working on Wall Street, and I was the Webster definition of miserable. I mean, if you looked it up in the dictionary, you'd see a picture of me. And
I thought you looked familiar. No, just kidding.
Right? The only thing that was keeping me there was just this sense that I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. I had no idea how to define my genius zone I didn't even know a genius zone as a professional existed, right? I thought this is success, because up until your first job, success is very linear, right? They tell you to get A's or be first chair or be on the varsity team and all that success. But then when you go out into the real world, there isn't just one job that's successful, although there are some who would like you to think that it's their one job that equals success. And so that's what I thought. I really did. I thought being on Wall Street and getting paid this crazy amount of money and having this lifestyle and living where I did was the epitome of career achievement at 25. And in a lot of ways it could be, but I was so miserable and hating every day and not living up to any sort of, potential or providing really any value. And the mechanism keeping me stuck and keeping me from feeling any semblance of unstoppable, just mostly stoppable, was the lack of clarity. It was truly the lack of just knowing myself, knowing how that version of myself could add value in the world, and then appreciating that success doesn't look one way everywhere. So that was the very
it's
first.
so hard because I remember when we got out of college, my wife said, nobody's going to give me a curriculum again. Like nobody's going to tell me what to study and what to read and what to do, how I'm graded. Nobody's telling me what the grades are, what's on the test. So that's great. What you mentioned genius zone. I want to talk about clarity because that sounds really interesting, but I don't know that I've heard genius zone used the way that I think you're using it. So it sounds more like the way I've heard it is more like the Genius Bar at the Apple Store. So what is it what do you mean by that? And how did how did you come up with or run into that concept?
Yeah. So just recently I discovered this quote, and I'm kicking myself that I didn't know about it before even the book, was Einstein, of all people, quotable as he is, said, everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life feeling stupid.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
That's when I really finally, it brought all the concepts that I had been teaching together and allowed me to articulate in such a way that there is a zone of genius for each of us in our professional lives. And we have the best chance of succeeding at the highest possible level if we honor that we don't have the best chance of succeeding at the highest possible level everywhere. In the same way that a fish is in no way even probably capable of climbing a tree, let alone won't get up there the fastest, won't be the most impactful, won't make the most money. But if we put it in its environment where it can thrive, then it has a much better chance of being fulfilled, having a sustainable existence, feeling good about itself, and then in this career case, right, making some money. Because we all know that when we're just phoning it in, we may be able to do that for so long, but it's certainly not our best chance at achieving at the highest level. And then achievement in our, capitalist society equals usually pay and advancement and growth and all the things that we're really looking for, that oftentimes we put ahead of our happiness, thinking that once we have those things, we will be happy. But what we're learning in psychology now is, of course, that we have that backwards. So it truly came back to my experience on Wall Street and thinking that I have to be successful here in this environment that someone else has told me successful people do. Yeah. And if I'm not, then there's something wrong with me. There's something, maybe I won't ever be successful, or maybe I'm not a good professional. Maybe I was just good at school, or sports.
Wow.
Right. So
that's really the fish image is so powerful, because it's like, well, maybe I'm not, the fish thinking, well, maybe I'm not a good bird, as though that were a bad thing.
Exactly.
No, you're not a bird.
With animals, it's so clear. And then with athletes, I grew up an athlete. It's so clear. You would never take the all-star pitcher on a team and put him at second base and be like, win a Golden Glove. You would actually expect him to fail, right? Like, and it's the same sport on the same field with the same equipment. You know what I mean? And so the reason that I think we struggle at this is that with animals, it's really obvious. With athletes, it's obvious, but maybe not as obvious as with animals. But then when you put us in an office or in a career, those look so similar and we look so similar that it's hard to tell one athlete or one animal from another. Wow. And that's where I think we get it really confused, that we do indeed each have our own genius zone professionally, and we're at our best if we honor that.
So this may be, I feel like this is a dumb question, so I'll share it because that's what I do. No, so how do you figure out if you're a fish or a second baseman or a pitcher? Like what?
Love it. So okay. That was the thing that really bothered me when I had this Wall Street job, was that nobody was out there saying, hey, here's the recipe. Here, this plus this plus this equals your niche. You know what I mean? And only in career, everywhere else in life, if you want to bake a cake, you look up a recipe.
Sure.
If your car battery dies and you want to jump it, you're certainly not going in there with the jumper cables like willy-nilly,
just
right?
Testing it out, see what happens.
You're going to look up how to do it. And you're going to have a predictable and consistent outcome, right? Because you're working through a process. And yet I would have given my left arm for this process, but I couldn't find it anywhere. I couldn't find anybody who was like, yeah, clarity, you take this part of your personality and you add it to this part of your interests and you do that. No, what do people do? They ask you like, oh, when you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up? Or what are you passionate about? Or these just horrible questions that if I knew the answer to,
I wouldn't be talking to you.
I would not have a problem, right? So that really upset me. And it upset me because it kept me in a miserable place for so long. But then it also was keeping all these people that I saw around me unhappy, just churning away at these jobs, hoping it would get better. And recognizing that time is finite. And if we're really trial and error, is that the best we can do in our careers with the impact we want to have with our lives? That sucks, right? And we wouldn't do anything else any other way, right? Science wouldn't have it. Wow. So I took it upon myself to build a methodology, to create a recipe. And I created that recipe part by looking at my own journey and seeing what worked and what didn't work, what was inspiring and insightful and what wasn't. And then I also started test driving these concepts on people as a career coach. And then I was also working as a human capital advisor. So I would go into companies and I got beautiful examples of what makes a rock star employee or why somebody would just skate by. And so I would reverse engineer what I learned from them on my clients. And it took about 3 years to really develop a robust methodology that could be replicable no matter your industry, no matter your age, no matter your background, no matter your goals even. If you want to be an entrepreneur, great. If you want to have an awesome 9 to 5, great.
Interesting.
All this is a step-by-step process for your clarity. That's what the book is. Literally, it walks you through, if you want to feel unstoppable, if you want to know your true value, if you want to be working in that mystical genius zone that we're talking about, and you want to really drive a career that feels like a dream job, then you have to go through these steps. So the major steps that get you to clarity. So if we have no idea what we want to do, and we just want to get to your niche, I just want to know the environment I was made for, the type of job I was made for. Those 3 steps are called now, nature, and nurture. Now being, where are you in your life right now? Values, responsibilities, circumstances, commitments, etc. Nature is your personality, your giftings, your strengths. And then nurture is everything else. It's what you've learned or earned along the way, as far as knowledge or skills or expertise. It's your cumulative life experiences. And if you imagine in your mind's eye, or actually I can show it to you, a triple Venn diagram of those 3 concepts. Wow. If you imagine now,
I know a Venn diagram, but a triple Venn. Whoa.
Triple Venn. Yeah. Imagine those 3 concepts coming together, now, nature, and nurture, where all 3 of them overlap. That's your niche, right? Where you are in your life right now overlaps who you are fundamentally, and also takes advantage of what you've learned over time. That's your niche. That is where you can thrive, where you can add maximum value, where you're going to have sustainability, where you're going to be happy, where you have the chance at the most. We call it gold medals, right? Like we want to keep Michael Phelps in the pool, and we want to keep Usain Bolt on the track. And if we were to swap them, they're both great athletes, but would they achieve at the same level? Probably not.
So do you have that? What page is it in the book?
Like this.
Now, nature,
that's a great
nurture.
question. Yep, and your professional niche just sits right in the middle. Obviously, that looks all nice and pretty. It's page 131.
Okay, so if you get the book, page 131, you can see. Yeah, that's great.
And it sounds so simplified, right? But some of the discovery process of knowing your now, knowing your nature, knowing your nurture is really challenging. And then the kicker that I'm going through right now even is that life changes and evolves, right? So you may wake up one morning and 50% of your core values are different because there's a pandemic going on, or because you have an elderly sick parent, or because you moved, or because of some unknown, unforeseeable circumstance. And then you do it again and again and again. So actually our model for the nth degree is a circle, because I really believe this is, an evolutionary process.
I agree. It's not, life is not static.
Isn't that crazy?
I think people might have thought that pre-pandemic, but I think now that we have a corporate or a global experience of, there are things out of our control.
Don't we coach people towards this too? Like even kids in high school, like, what's your passion? What's your purpose? What impact do you want to make on the world? And I'm like, I like a bunch of stuff. Some days I like to crochet, and some days I like to play softball, and then some days I like to color, and then some, to have one purpose in your whole life is a little ridiculous, and also extremely short-sighted, because you and I both know as adults, I don't know. I'm adulting with quotes.
Don't let the gray hair fool you. Yeah, no, I'm not sure.
I may be an author, but an adult, I don't know.
The pandemic, even the length of my hair in the pandemic is changing, but I don't know. Yeah,
your purpose, your passions, they evolve as you grow and evolve and reach new levels of awareness of yourself and the world and your opportunities. And I think that the best we can do is be equipped with our own process to make the next best decision, depending on, whatever else is going on.
That's really permission giving. Because when you think about what's your life purpose, there's a weight of, what if I get it wrong? What if I say I'm supposed to do this and I mess up? But I like the next best, the best next step, or whatever that. The now, nurture, nature, that really intrigues me. I was just doing something. I've been listening to teaching from a woman named Suzanne Stabile, who one of the things she does is papers. I put these big butcher block papers. I use big Post-it notes, and I wrote down all the stuff the beliefs I had growing up that I was either taught by my family or I took on. The beliefs I had, and then it was the beliefs you have now on the next one, and there was a third one. I never got through the first. But it was fascinating to just brainstorm. These are messages I picked up. For me, I think of them as stories I picked up, but in the context of what her exercise was, it was your beliefs. And so that helped me to see some of the hardwiring and some of the conflict in the hardwiring of, not the hardwiring, the nurture part though, of these are the things I was told was successful or the way the world operated. This is also what I believed. Oh, these are at odds. There's a tension here. But how do you help people, or how have you found it helpful for people to explore the now nature or nurture?
Yeah, so it's really multifaceted what you're talking about. That's part therapy, part psychology, part coaching.
Well, I want people to buy the book, so I wanted to ask a very big question that you'd only be able to give a limited amount for.
I love it. So there's a couple ways. So in the now phase, what we do, the very first exercise is a life audit. So we actually encourage people to look at their life in its totality, just in this moment, not what I wish it was or what it used to be right now.
I thought you meant like a historical life.
Oh, no. Oh my gosh. Can I tell you? So this is 3 years of this or that. It works, it doesn't work. We used to do in our core program basically like a background check is what we called it. And you were supposed to like jot down your life from like 0 to 5 and then 6 to 11 and then all the major things going on. It was the most obnoxious and least useful exercise I've ever asked somebody to do. It is not in the book. It's not in the book. Because you know what? There are ways to take advantage of your history without getting lost in it.
Ooh, that's good.
Ooh, write it down.
We're recording this, so that's good. Yeah.
To take advantage of your history without getting stuck or mired or lost in what has happened to you over time. What worked, what didn't work, what crashed and burned, what injuries you've experienced, mentally, physically. So in the now phase, we do a life audit. I have them write down 8 core areas of their life. Is social, emotional, physical, spiritual, professional, etc. And if you want all 8, you can buy the book. No, I'm just kidding. And then how I do it is 3 sections. What's going well? What could improve? Because I don't like to say this is horrible. And then what's just neutral? What are some of your life circumstances that maybe aren't good or bad? They just are, and you have to work within them. So like me as a renter of an apartment is not maybe better or worse than owning a house, but it is just one less responsibility that I have. And it's just important. Part of now is getting clear on who you are now. But the other part is honoring your reality, because a 25-year-old who doesn't even own a goldfish is going to have a totally different set of options that are viable right now than a 40-year-old with a mortgage and 4 kids. And
I heard that when you were mentioning the now, that was very, I thought very compassionate, because if you're a single parent trying to provide for your kids, you have a different now than someone who's empty nester or not, or just out of college or.
And I think it's irresponsible to just tell those people, oh, you can do whatever you want, because maybe you physically are unable to do whatever you want, but that doesn't mean you can't get clear on what you do want and work towards that. You know what I mean?
So good.
There's a difference, I think, is like, this is pie in the sky and this is your reality. Let's work within it. Let's honor it and let's move forward. So there's that. And then in the nature section, what we help people get really clear on is their hardwiring sort of as a human being. So from a personality perspective, from a behavioral perspective, I have some amazing assessments that I love and recommend in the book. And there's one of them that was my sort of awakening as Tracy, you're a goldfish kind of awakening.
Well, I'm an assessment junkie. So remind me, was this one we talked about back?
It's called Predictive Index.
I think you mentioned this to me because you used it then, right?
It's a business tool than an individual tool. And I got trained in it and I was using it for businesses. And I was like, this is gold. Like, job seekers need this to know how to articulate who they are in a professional setting. Because it's one thing to say, I have a high sense of urgency. It's another thing to say why that's beneficial or why that makes you better at your job or why a company would want that. So knowing who you are and then knowing how to apply it, are two different things.
That's really
But then part of what you're talking about with, looking back at your history and how you've been, coached and molded over time, and how that may be useful or not useful, is in the
Well, that's part
nurture.
of it is it useful for me now? That was the third part, I think. What are the ones that are
Yeah.
useful? Thank you.
In the nurture piece, we actually do have people write down both things from their cumulative life experiences. And then we give them the opportunity to say, I'm not going to move forward with this anymore. It's okay. It's sort of a Marie Kondo, like, thank you shirt that I never
Marie Kondo
wore,
your life.
but I spent $100 on. You served me because I was joyful making this purchase, but then I never wore you, and that's okay. And you let it free, right?
I
I
see a
think
fish with fins. Thank you, tree. I like having you there. You provide nice shade.
you
I'm never going
inspire
to climb
me,
you.
but I'm out. You know what I mean? That's exactly what it is, because just because you've gained some knowledge or area of expertise or whatever, you're never pot committed in your life, in your career, right? We had a girl that we worked with a couple years ago who had a master's and was working towards her PhD in psychology. You know what she does now? She's a professional organizer, and she's never been happier in her life.
Wow.
She literally wrote us a testimonial that says, I didn't know I could be this happy. And it's because, and what's cool is she didn't just throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? She's not doing completely nothing related to psychology. She actually gets to leverage what she knows about human beings in organizing their space, in creating peaceful things to look at, in, organizing their stuff. And just because she was working towards a PhD and had maybe paid some money into it or done so many classes, like, we freed her from feeling beholden to finishing that for just the sake of finishing it, or having to continue her career in that industry, because she was so miserable doing it. Is it worthwhile work? Sure. Was it hard work for her to get her degree? Yes. But does that mean that you're a slave to that the rest of your life?
Wow.
No. You know what I mean? So
Well,
I
and this
think
is where you're saying that you're asking people, what did you want to be when you grew up, is just a non-starter, because, like, for me, I didn't realize how many different types of engineering there were. There are tons of engineers, or financial planning, or whatever. So for this, she's totally using what she wanted to do, but you wouldn't have said professional organizer. Like, what did you major in? Professional organization? No, I mean,
right.
But she's getting to flourish. That's great.
Yeah, it's really cool. And so we encourage people to, let go of what needs to be let go of, but then get creative with how you can repurpose some of your knowledge or expertise or your skill set in a completely agnostic environment, right? Because it might not be intuitive right away to think that somebody who organizes a home has some psychology background, but when you realize that people get so much joy out of their home, and it's a place of peace, and it's a place of re-energizing, then you would want somebody who understands psychology so that they know how to properly set up a space that would give you the best chance of experiencing those emotions, right? So that was her way to repurpose that, so that this is one of my favorite, it's part of the book, actually. It's a whole chapter.
Oh, cool.
A nothing is wasted mindset. Because it's 2.5 years on Wall Street, and I was a fish in a tree. I was like, I wasted the first 2.5 years of my career. I am now 2.5 years behind everybody else, right? And imagine that exponentiated if you're 10 years into your career, 20 years into your career, 30 years into your career.
Yeah,
you can start to think, wow, I've wasted all this time. I haven't accomplished anything. But the reality is, everything that you've experienced has value if you try to find value in it. And whether that's it taught you something you do like, something you don't like, it's all valuable unless you don't take the time to value it, I believe. And I was taught that by somebody after I left my Wall Street gig, who she literally called it the nothing is wasted mindset. She's like, we're going to look at everything you've done. We're going to make sure that this wasn't wasted time. You could choose to waste it if you want, and that's your mindset. Or you can dig and dig and dig and then find a nugget. And then you're like, oh, all right, I won't ever do that again. But at least I got this.
I can take that with me. Yeah. Wow. That's great. Wow.
Isn't that fun?
So what, I know in our talking, you've mentioned 3 C's before. Can you, just for everybody listening, what are what are those?
So actually, with our clients that we work with, we have a couple of foundational programs that help people achieve this higher level of clarity and knowledge and insight in themselves, so that they'll depending on what program they go through, they'll either discover their true value, define their genius zone, or drive their dream career, right? Like that
flows really well with the cover. That's great. I love the alignment. So good.
Worked out beautifully. So it sort of depends on where you are. If you are completely, Tracy, if you ask me my level of clarity on a 1 to 10 scale, and I'm a 0, I'm a -5. I know nothing. Then you probably need the discover piece, right? But if you're like a 7 or 8 and you just want to define that genius zone, you really want to nail it down, then you're in the define phase. But if you know what it is that you want to do, and you're just like, help me get my next job, help me level up, help me get a raise, whatever, then you're in the drive phase, right? Then you're testing, you're navigating. So the 3 C's are something that we measure our clients in when they start our program and when they complete our program, so that we have both a qualitative and a quantitative way to say that we succeeded. The 3 C's are clarity, confidence, and certainty. Because what I find is clarity is at the basis of all of this. Without clarity, it's very hard to have confidence or any semblance of certainty. But if you have clarity into who you are and the value that you provide, all of a sudden your confidence is coming from a place of knowledge. It's not coming from bravado or ego. It's coming from facts. Like, look, this is my value. I did all the work to figure out what it is, and this is what it is. And then once you have clarity and confidence, all of a sudden your success is a foregone certainty. It's a foregone conclusion, right? Are you experiencing right now? Are you going to always have absolute certainty in your life? Never. But to have some certainty as to where you're going next, and that it's the right choice for you, and that it feels really
and to have that clarity. So when the pandemic and lockdowns happened, I saw a lot of organizations and leaders just melt. They really didn't know what to do when the structures that they had been sure of were no longer there. And so what was intriguing to me was the simple reminding people what isn't changing. What is still true about your organization? And one of my friends had to even lay off high-performing team members that he really enjoyed having on his team, but they didn't have the revenue anymore. So, but he was able to keep the, with the team, that clarity part, I think it seems to resonate with that of, this is not changing. The what was the third one? Certainty?
Yeah, what's still true.
Certainty is changing. But the clarity gives us the confidence of, we don't know what's ahead anymore. We can't do all that strategic plan that's gone. But this is, you can still have a level of confidence because the clarity. You've done the clarity stuff.
Yeah.
So cool. Wow.
I think all of it comes from clarity. When we lack clarity in any part of our life, like, where do I want to live? Is this the person I want to marry? Is this the job I want to have? Is this the sandwich I want to eat? Like, it just, it just creates this whole ripple effect of uncertainty and lack of confidence. And then you
think of all the energy we would save if we had clarity before we went to the fridge instead of opening the fridge and staring at it.
Oh my God. So literally, this is in the book, I think. My friend KR came up with this after we graduated college. She calls it the peanut butter problem. And she's like, listen, the world is not going to change because you chose a peanut butter sandwich over, a BLT. It's going to be fine. And for my TED Talk, I've only done one, and I probably only will ever do one because the box checked, right?
Right.
That was not a fun format for me. I'm not going to lie.
Okay, cool.
But people liked it. I talk about the peanut butter problem actually being that if you go into a grocery store and you want to buy a jar of peanut butter right now, with our, abundance of choices, you could stand there forever if you don't know ahead of time what it is that you're looking for. If you have no standards and no stipulation for the type of peanut butter you want, then you're considering all these options, and it could take forever, right? The difference, imagine the philosophical difference of going into a job search open to anything. It's exactly like going into the peanut butter aisle and going, I'm open to any of these jars. Whereas if you go in and go, you know what, I want unsalted, I want raw peanuts, I want them to be chunky, I don't want the kind that has that little stuff at the top. Like, if you have some parameters around what you're looking for, it narrows your search and it shortens your search.
That's true.
Right? The more hyper-focused we are, the better. And it's the number one thing that people do in their job search that I think we screw up, is that, I'm open to anything. I'm open to all opportunities. I will consider.
I see that on LinkedIn profiles. People say that on LinkedIn. Open to opportunities.
No. It's
seems
so tempting
so
because you
bad.
want the
Yeah.
solution, right? And then the last thing that you want to feel like is you were too picky and you missed your opportunity. I missed my one chance.
That
You know
would
what I
be
mean?
scary. Yeah, I can see
That's
that.
the psychology though. That's where that's our fear mechanism trying to just take care of the short-term problem. It's not our smarter brain
Ooh.
taking care of the longer term problem, which is sustainability, which is happiness, which is success, which is reaching more potential. It's a band-aid when what we need is stitches, and it's a list that just says peanut butter as opposed to a list that says,
KR, is that who said it?
yeah, KR, she's amazing. KR
Thank
Ling,
you,
if you're out there,
KR. I appreciate
she's
that because that's
fantastic.
so helpful.
It came up because I was in a super anxious place, and she and I were in Mexico together on a trip, and we were walking up and down this one street in Mexico. And we passed a handful of different restaurants. They're all the same, right? They're all the same. And yet I was like poring over the menu and because I was so anxious at my job that I had forced in my head, this has to be the perfect weekend. This has to be the perfect experience. And finally, she just grabbed my shoulders and shook me in the middle of the street in Mexico and was like, all these restaurants are the same. Like, whichever one we pick, it's not going to be the end of the weekend. We're going to have so much fun. We're going to have so many more experiences. And I just like burst out crying because I put so much pressure on this one minuscule decision. And that's where the peanut butter problem came from. And now it's obviously
beautiful
extrapolated beyond that. But
wow, that's so good.
A while back, I was going to write a blog post about that story. And I actually went and found the street we were walking on, and I found the names of the restaurants. And so it really happened. It was really funny.
Have you written the blog post?
Yeah, it's somewhere buried in my blog. It's 8 years old, but yeah, TracyTimm.com if you want to go hunt around for the peanut butter problem.
Tim with 2 M's.
Tim with 2 M's.
Yep.
Yes.
Good. Well, I am so honored that you've taken the time to talk with us. I would actually, and I would love to keep on going, but I know that people are probably watching and will I'm sure. I think this is probably a good time to bring this conversation to a close. What would you say, besides buying the book, which should be either here or over there or right there? What would you say what would you encourage people to do if they're listening and they're thinking, oh my goodness, fish, I get this. I want clarity. The genius zone sounds really important. Maybe I'm in a position that is just, I'm not failing. I'm not a failure because I'm failing. I'm just not, this isn't the position I'm supposed to play. What would be in addition to buying your book, what would be something that you'd say that would help them move the next level, even after just watching this?
So normally I would jump right into what's step one. What do you want to do first? If you've made this decision, if this is resonating with you, and you can honestly get that, I think in the book preview on Amazon if you want. More importantly, what I'll tell you is if this is on your mind and you haven't yet committed to a solution, there's probably a reason why. You're probably doubting yourself for some reason. And the key is to figure out if you're really committed to making a change in this area or not. Because you can't be 1 foot in and 1 foot out when making a life transition or transformation. You have to decide, I'm going to move away from this definition of success and I'm going to define it for myself. Or I'm going to reject these shiny things over here and make my happiness my first priority, right? And the way that I like to do this, that's worked for me time and time again, is when I was on semester at sea, after I left Wall Street, I met the woman who taught me the nothing is wasted mindset, but I also met a professor of psychology who taught me the psychology of regrets. And I think I wrote about this a little bit in the book, but I'll just explain it here shortly.
Sure.
There are only psychologically 2 things you can regret. There are only 2 categories. You can regret something you did, or you can regret something you chose not to do, something you passed on. And they're called regrets of commission being something you did, and omission being something you did not do, right? Okay. And it turns out that, yes, regrets of commission, things we did, are painful, right? Like you cheated, you lied, you stole, whatever. You stole.
We learned them real good.
And you get caught and you feel bad and mea culpa, and I regret doing that, right? The outcome was bad. There was a consequence. I regret, etc. What's fascinating about that is that the brain gets a full, complete story, right? It gets a beginning, it gets a middle, and it gets an end. There was a resolution. You chose to do something. This was the outcome. You feel bad about it. You move on. What happens with regrets of omission is that there's a beginning and there's a middle, and then there is not no end. There's an infinite amount of possible endings, right? Because isn't that the truth? When we choose not to do something, we forego all of the ripple effects that could have come from that decision.
Yeah.
And our brains psychologically are not okay with not having an end to a story. And that's why
Wow. Yeah.
when you're, thinking back on your life, what do you think about? You don't regret like saying, I love you and falling on your face, probably. You regret the time you didn't say it because you're wondering what would have happened. And then your brain churns through all of the things that might have happened, right? So psychologically, not doing something leads to longer and more extensive regret than trying and failing. And when I right? So when I finally got that through my thick skull, I realized that it's actually riskier and more painful in the long term not to try than it is to try and have it not go the way you expected.
Yeah.
So if you're on the fence about making a change in this area of your life, picture yourself I like to picture myself as a grandma with an Afghan in my lap that I crocheted, with a cat in my lap that I own, on a porch, rocking back and forth and thinking about my life. And would you wonder what if you don't make a change in this area, if you don't lean into this feeling that you have, if you don't listen to your gut, if you're not tuned into your intuition that it's time to make a move, are you going to regret it? Are you going to regret it even more than if you make a move and it doesn't go so well and you have to go back? Or you make a move, like you start a business, you fall on your face and you declare bankruptcy, but you start over. Are you going to regret that more than spending the rest of your life wondering what might have happened?
I love that, because when we were thinking of, we always thought we were going to live overseas, and it wasn't happening. And my wife reminded me that our kids were going to leave high school. They were going to get out of the house before we were going to be living in Calcutta. So what it came down to was the two questions she asked us were exactly that. I think you said the regret of commission and regret of omission. She said, would we rather risk moving to South Carolina, 11 states away, and totally screwing up our kids' lives and having to apologize for it in 5 years, that was a stupid decision? Or would we rather stay here and wonder for the rest of our lives, should we have moved? And it was exactly the same thing. We are so much more comfortable with risk of, I'd rather say we screwed up for the right reasons. Here's why we're moving. And we totally messed up your lives, and we'll help with the therapy bills because that was dumb. That was really dumb. We can all commiserate together. We'll all be 21 at that point, so we can all have a pint legally in public and enjoy it. But that's so regrets of commission, regrets of omission. Wow. Thank you.
It's a game changer for me. Honestly, every time I think about doing something, I ask myself, am I scared to do this for a good reason or not? And am I going to regret if I don't do it? To the point where I'm that girl now. I'll go up to somebody in the bar that I think is cute because, what if they're my future husband? And I walk out of the bar thinking, I missed my shot. I just take that extra risk. And I think, and I say risk because most people are going to see it as risky, right? Because it's scary to fail or fall on your face or be rejected or whatever. But you definitely don't get to writing a book without taking some risks. You don't get to starting a business without taking some risks. And you put a lot of yourself out there in these things. People could be watching this and just rip me apart because something arbitrary, it doesn't look like Tracy put on makeup, whatever.
Yeah, it's stupid, but still,
Yeah, that's the thing. And at the end of the day, it's just you. You could look at what society says is the right answer, the right decision, or what your parents expect of you, or what have you. But beyond your spouse and the people who require your care to live, it's just you guys, and if you're not happy, you're probably not the best partner you could be. You're probably not the best parent you could be. Sometimes I'm not the best daughter I could be, or cat mom that I could be.
Our cat never thinks we measure up to her expectations.
I know, right? Isn't that so funny? I just figure my cats walk around going, ugh, peasant. And just
biped. Ours is always saying biped.
Oh, that's funny. I'm going to tell that to my mom. That's great. Anyway, that gets me through the inevitable freakouts and doubts that I have, that even to this day I have. We're not immune.
Well, and that's what I love about what you're talking about, is that it's not saying that you're going to have it's not that life will be nirvana and everything will be blissful and frolicking through the fields. It's real life. There's going to be real constraints. You're going to consistently be moving with that. But as you develop into the genius zone or the clarity, confidence and certainty, you're able to have that anchor so that you can flex and move with life and intentionally decide, is this something I'm going to do or not? Or is this something I'm going to learn from or not? It gives you you're less of a victim to it, and you're more of a player.
Intentionality, the purposefulness, and the more you can live with that intentionality, the less reactive you have to be, and the less you're on your heels to make decisions.
And the great news is, at least from my experience, because people tell me, wow, you and your wife are so intentional, it becomes habitual. It's like exercising a muscle. You build the muscle and you don't even realize that you're being abnormally. I mean, for us, like just like for you, for us to move, it was a no-brainer. When we put it in that way, we'd rather risk in apologizing than wonder whatever forever. Now I know why, because it would open a story loop in our brain that we would have infinite possibilities. So
I'm telling Tracy, you, I just remind myself, lifelong regret or a little bit of, pie in the
a
face.
Little uncomfortable. And on that, Tracy, thank you so much. This has been super enjoyable. Where can people find you? I know they can see the book wherever it is on this Amazon Live, but where can they find you if they want to find more of what you're doing?
So Tracy Timm is what you want to look for on the interwebs. If you type that into Google search, you will find basically pages and pages of content and fun stuff. Our program is called the Nth Degree,
Ooh.
So your limitless potential. So if you look up Nth Degree and Tracy Timm, you'll find all of our program information, and you can book. We have free strategy calls that last 50 minutes to see if we're a good fit to work together. So we've got a lot of value out there for people who are dabbling in this area, for people who are this is exactly what I need right now, and sort of everything in between.
I can see so many people that are listening to this and getting to this point in the conversation saying, I need that. I totally need that, because that, what you're saying makes total sense and sounds like something you could live out. It's not like something you just try and then discard. It sounds like something that becomes part of you because it's based on you. So
exactly. We're building our alumni network right now. We're building out a membership program because that's what we want to encourage is lifers, Nth Degree lifers, people who make decisions using this process over and over and over again.
Imagine being surrounded by like-minded people that get it.
Right?
Oh, wow, that's good.
Isn't that always the best? I miss that immersive, like on campus feeling of like, I'm with my people.
I know. Great. Well, thanks so much. And if everybody, this is the first of a series of these interviews initially with Page 2 authors, and go to tracytimm.com, get unstoppable, and be unstoppable. Until the next time, bye everyone.